it's on. Yes, now it is. I can hear it. Good morning. Welcome to the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, Global Food Security Symposium 2016. My name is Daalder. I am the president of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. As many of you know, the Council is an independent, nonpartisan organization committed to educating the public and influencing the public discourse on global issues of the day. And today, we're very proud to be talking about the globally important issue of food security, which has been a major focus of the Council since 2008. The Council has convened the symposium since 2010. Our purpose is to bring together leaders from across sectors to talk about how we can move the needle forward in the quest for global food security. Because we are based in the Midwest, which is the home to many U.S. growers and agri-food businesses, and because food insecurity is one of the most pressing and important issues facing America and the world today, the Council is committed to convening studies and dialogues on the topic of global agricultural development and food security. At the Chicago Council event last year, we brought together leaders from the agriculture, food, and health sectors to discuss how to improve nutrition. The year before that, we discussed the changing climate as a factor for realizing food security around the world. Today, we're pleased to continue exploring how global changes both threaten progress and provide opportunities for positive change at scale as we explore the topic of rapid urbanization and its transformative effects on the food system. I'm extremely pleased to introduce today our new leader of the Global Food and Agricultural Program, Alicia Black. As many of you know, Lisa Moon, who ran our work here for many, many years, moved on to a new role last fall as the CEO of the Global Food Bank Network. I know many of you know Lisa well, and will be pleased to learn that she's continuing the very important work in this area. Alicia has joined us earlier this year. She comes from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Many of you already know Alicia, and for those who don't, I encourage you to get to know her during the course of the day. She will join us throughout the program to help moderate the questions and answer sessions when we have that as part of our panels. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We have an extremely tight schedule. All speakers and panels will take place in this room. We'll shift to the ballroom across the floor for lunch at noon. So please, if you can, stick to the schedule as much as you can. Silence your phones, but don't turn them off. We encourage you to be part of the conversation through Twitter, Facebook, and every other social media that we have. We have Twitter walls presented at the side, so you can actively participate in the conversation, but please do so without talking or ringing your phones. Finally, we have biographies of all of the speakers in your packets. So our introductions, that's one of those phones that we probably want to turn off. Where you have bios, so our introductions will be limited. If you really want to know who is coming here and speaking in front of you, please consult your biographies. As I said, we're incorporating several live interactive technologies into the agenda. The event is being live streamed. The Council will live tweet announcements, keynote speeches, panel discussions throughout the symposium using the Twitter handle @GlobalAgDev, D-E-V, and @Chicago Council. The symposium hashtag is #GlobalAg. As I mentioned, you'll see the Twitter walls. These screens will display tweets throughout the day using the symposium hashtag #GlobalAg. Audiences around the world and here in this room are invited to join us in the conversations. A few questions from Twitter will be selected and posted to selected panels. Now it is my pleasure to acknowledge a number of organizations who have made this work we are doing here possible. We have several other organizations who are partnering with us. Their logos will be on the screens at the side, and we're grateful for their support and cooperation. The Council would also like to thank the businesses that provide financial support to carry out this event. We're extremely grateful to our lead sponsor, Abbott, and also our supporting sponsor, Cargill. The Council is pleased to host several advanced undergraduate and postgraduate students. Members of this delegation have a yellow ribbon on their name tag. Council would like to thank its lead sponsors, supporting sponsors, and also DuPont, Land O'Lakes, and RTI International for supporting this delegation so they can be with us here today. In addition to the students with us today, there are several other students joining us via live stream as social media ambassadors, and they will be tweeting throughout the event. Of course, the Chicago Council could not be doing its work in global ag and food security without the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we're extremely grateful to them and their confidence and support of our work. We also want to acknowledge the members of the Project Advisory Group and our lead author, Tom Reardon, who together with the co-chairs, Dan Glickman and Doug Bereuter, put together the Council report. And with that, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage Dan Glickman, co-chair of the Council's Global Food Security Project. He will present the report on food security and urbanization that the Council is proud to release this morning. Thank you and welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Ivo, very much. Welcome, everybody. And my colleague Doug Bereuter and I, who are co-chairs of this effort, are going to be talking in summary fashion about the report. And then afterwards, we're going to have a great day of individual discussions and people's personal experiences and what we can do to deal with this problem. So as Ivo said, we've done many in-depth studies on a range of issues affecting our food system. Last year, we looked at how the global food system would deal with the issues concerning malnutrition. In previous year, we looked at climate change and how that puts food security at risk. And this year's Council report outlines how rapid urbanization worldwide, especially in Africa and Asia, is changing the world food system. This report was authored by Dr. Tom Reardon with feedback and endorsement from our advisory group. And you will be seeing some slides as we're talking that will amplify what I'm saying. Feeding the rapidly expanding populations in the world cities is a pressing global concern. Today, more people live in urban areas than in rural areas, and by 2050, this will increase to 2/3 of the world's population living in cities. This demographic shift is happening especially quickly in low and middle income countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Africa's population is projected to grow from 40% urban today to 56% urban by 2050. Asia's is expected to grow from 48 to 64% urban, and Latin America is expected to grow from 80 to 90% urban by 2050. Some countries in Southeast Asia and Latin America are on track to triple their urban share of the population within 60 years, which is twice as fast as how urbanization occurred in the United States. As cities grow, diets are changing. Urban consumers are demanding a more diversified diet, including fruits, vegetables, dairy, and meat, and are increasingly consuming processed foods. Accompanying these shifts is a transformation of supply chains, affecting farmers, small and medium-sized enterprises, and consumers. A process has begun which will continue for decades that is transforming food systems. These changes are all taking place alongside other pressures, including, 1, the need to increase production in order to feed a global population of over 9 billion people by the year 2050. 2, increasing weather volatility, such as droughts, floods, and natural disasters due to changing climate. 3, a growing triple burden of malnutrition as obesity and diet-related chronic diseases rates skyrocket, while nearly 800 million remain chronically hungry and 2 billion suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. And 4, refugee migration is the highest since World War II right now. In light of these pressures, the Council looked at how the confluence of system changes and global trends, chief among them urbanization, is transforming the structure and conduct of the entire food system from the farm to the consumer. This report makes the case for building an inclusive, resilient food system that can feed the world's growing cities and outlines how the U.S. government can lead global efforts to meet these challenges. Feeding cities presents a major opportunity to improve the plight of millions of small-scale farmers and rural residents. Up to 90% of food consumed in low-income countries come from domestic sources in rural areas. Cities also contain the lion's share of the growing demand for high-value products such as fruits, vegetables, and dairy, where small-scale farmers can have an advantage because the products are so labor-intensive. To supply increased volumes of food demanded by urban consumers, supply chains must lengthen geographically, increasing the potential to reach farmers in more and more distant areas. This not only benefits farmers, but also rural enterprises along the whole supply chain, like wholesalers, transporters, processors, and input suppliers. Participation in growing urban food markets can provide the rising incomes and rural employment urgently needed to meet rural food security challenges, alleviating rural poverty, and addressing the devastating lack of jobs among the demographic youth bulge in low-income countries. Transforming food systems also benefits urban and rural consumers, with a greater supply of more diverse, nutritious foods year-round, giving access to people who previously had to deal with just seasonal foods alone, and also reducing food costs. Despite these opportunities, growing urban demand and transformation of food systems presents challenges that will have to be addressed. Food waste and food safety risks may grow as supply chains get longer. Increases in food transport raise concern about increases in greenhouse gas emissions. Water scarcity and competition for water may increase as water requirements expand in cities and on the farms. Poor or lacking physical infrastructure and energy infrastructure can make productivity, transport, and logistics more difficult and costly. As dietary demands change, health concerns from diet-related chronic diseases may also increase. Importantly, the transformation of food systems and the development of supply chains will not inherently include small-scale farmers. There is a real risk that many of them can or will be left behind. Farmers in remote areas and farmers who lack resources to increase their production and meet quality standards are especially vulnerable. Women farmers are often already more marginalized than their male counterparts and may find it difficult to access these new markets. If small farmers are excluded from urban markets and food system transformation now, they risk being stuck in perpetual semi-subsistence farming for generations to come and becoming part of the lagging regions of tomorrow. It is critical that the development of food systems to meet urban demand include small farmers and also the rural entrepreneurs and the small enterprises along the supply chain. Inclusive growth will require smart and deliberate investments by governments and the private sector. Investing in food systems to meet major demand in low-income countries is also a major market opportunity for the private sector. In Africa alone, the agriculture and food sector is expected to reach $1 trillion by the year 2030. Food and beverage consumption in the region is projected to reach $544 billion by 2020, as consumers buy both greater quantities of food and higher quality items. Market research suggests that the global fruit and vegetable market is projected to be valued at $2.3 trillion by 2017, an increase of nearly 52% from its value in 2012. The scale of investment needed for food systems to meet urban demand makes it evident that action and innovation by the private sector will be essential to feeding cities. Attention to equity and inclusion is not just an important development goal, it is smart business. Analysis has found that $7 trillion global food and beverage industry will not be able to continue delivering the financial returns expected by company shareholders without tapping into small-scale farmers' productivity. National and local governments in low- and middle-income countries are immensely important in the development of an inclusive, diverse, sustainable, and efficient food system. Governments can facilitate public infrastructure like better roads and highways and energy grids. Governments can create an enabling policy and regulatory environment for investment and growth. And because of the increasing demand for agricultural land, land use policies must be carefully considered. Civil society also has a critical role to play in transforming food systems to feed the world cities. NGOs and a growing number of social enterprises are increasingly on the leading edge of experimentation and demonstration of new models to encourage development. Civil society groups play a critical role in advocating for vulnerable populations like small-scale farmers as systems evolve, and often help national and local government make policy changes and establish good governance practices. Civil society can also hold both the private and public sectors accountable for programs and policies aimed at building inclusive food systems and facilitating engagements between the private and public sectors. But U.S. leadership will be essential to meet the challenge of feeding an increasing urban world. The United States must enable and leverage private sector investments to improve the world's food systems and meet exploding demand. U.S. foreign assistance support, particularly for small-scale agriculture and small rural enterprises, can ensure the inclusion of these enterprises and farmers and enable them to fully participate and benefit from burgeoning urban markets. Investments in scientific research and innovation will also be needed for food systems to successfully increase productivity and meet demand. Meeting these challenges is also squarely in the interests of the United States. Strong global food systems will contribute to affordable, nutritious, and safe food for consumers around the world, including in the United States. Growing markets create demand for U.S. exports and offer enormous new investment opportunities for the private sector. And stable food supplies and food prices are also critical to political and economic stability and are therefore soundly in the U.S. national security interest. In closing, feeding the world's cities is an enormous challenge, but also an enormous opportunity. With its world-renowned research institutions and global agri-food businesses, and with decades of leadership on mitigating global hunger and malnutrition under its belt, the United States has led and should continue to lead the way in this area. So the Council has put forth a number of recommendations on how to do all these myriad of things that I just talked about, and to present these, I'm pleased to give the floor to my fellow co-chair, Doug Bereuter. Thank you all very much.
Good morning to all of you. And thank you, Dan, for detailing the global trends outlined in this report and their implications. In the face of these trends, the United States has a tremendous opportunity to offer leadership on developing inclusive, resilient food systems that can feed the world's growing cities. The Growing Food for Growing Cities report argues that the United States can best contribute in 4 key areas: policy, business, science, and education. At the heart of all of these recommendations is the importance of partnerships between the United States government and other national governments, with universities, with research institutions, with civil society, with the United Nations, and with businesses of all sizes, from multinational corporations to local enterprises. We have 4 broad recommendations. First off, as in previous reports, we recommend that the United States make global food and nutrition security a long-term foreign policy priority. The Council has made this recommendation in the past, and it bears repeating. Both the administration and Congress have made great strides toward this. In recent weeks, both the House and the Senate have passed versions of the Global Food Security Act, which creates a comprehensive global food security strategy and authorizes funding with overwhelming bipartisan support. These efforts are extremely laudable and important, and I think we should all congratulate them on their efforts so far. I know I am understating the point by saying this, but I can assure you we're all following the next steps toward enactment with great interest. We believe these developments have demonstrated that there is a strong political will to act on these issues. However, as this year's report highlights, in the face of a rapidly changing food system, the urgency of food and nutrition security challenges ahead of us cannot be overstated. In line with this, we recommend that the United States government must commit to a strategy that lasts beyond one presidential administration. For this to happen, Congress needs to make food security an enduring foreign policy strategy. But it doesn't stop there. Continued congressional engagement and oversight is also critical to the success of a long-term global food security strategy. Given the important role of national and local policies for food system development, the United States should increase support for strengthening the capacity of national and subnational policymakers and implementers across the world. Especially important are strong policies regarding infrastructure development, land rights, food safety protections, and gender equity. With the announcement by the international community of the Sustained Development Goals in 2015 comes renewed global focus on the need to end hunger and poverty and the opportunity for the United States to continue to lead global action on these goals. Leading a small farmer-centered food system agenda beginning in 2017, catalyzed by U.S. action, would be a tremendous contribution to the legacy begun at the G8 summit in Italy in 2009. The report recommends that the United States lead a review of global progress on food security since that summit in 2009. These findings should then inform a recommitment among G7 countries to fulfill their pledges. Second, the report recommends that we enable and leverage inclusive private sector investment in the food system. Given the scale of the challenges of feeding cities, private sector investment will absolutely be critical. But for U.S. companies to make these investments, the United States government must play a role in helping to reduce the risk of investing in low-income countries, even in areas that welcome investment. To accomplish this, the report recommends that the next administration establish an interagency policy working group that establishes a holistic and coordinated approach to development finance tools already available to the private sector investors. We have a number of tools already. They're underdeveloped, they're not coordinated. At the same time, the U.S. government also has an ability to invest in programs that support local and regional small enterprises all along the entire food supply chain in low-income countries. U.S. agencies should put particular emphasis on enterprises led by women entrepreneurs. Third, we recommend that the U.S. trade policy improve regional trade capacity. Efficient regional trade will be essential if farmers are to feed cities in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But too often, food staples and perishable goods are delayed at national borders or are barred from crossing entirely. I noted that while Africa produced enough food to feed its entire population a couple decades ago, they no longer do. Actually, they do. They simply can't move it across the borders and get it where it needs to go in Africa today. So such barriers also inhibit U.S. companies from making investments in agriculture and food sector and impede growth of businesses. The U.S. can build countries' regional trade capacity through our own trade practices, the things we negotiate. Fourth, the report calls for an expanded research agenda. Building improved food systems first depends on continued investment in basic R&D for major crops. In addition, the specific focus of this report also points out the need to address particularly critical research components, including the following areas, by no means all-inclusive. Crops with improved shelf life and better transportability of perishable foods. Research and development on improved harvesting and storage technologies. Methods to reduce post-harvest loss and waste, and food safety improvements. R&D for climate resilience at every stage of the food supply chain, from farm to fork, soil health, and water conservation. R&D for leapfrog technologies like solar energy and mobile phones, and probably lots of things we haven't even thought about yet. The final area for U.S. leadership is investing in the next generation of leaders. To meet the challenges of the food system, the next generation must be made up of the scientists and farmers and entrepreneurs and political leaders who are ready and able to find the solutions for these challenges that we face. Special attention should be given to programs that also invest in women scientists and entrepreneurs in low-income countries. In conclusion, Feeding Cities presents a major opportunity to improve the plights of millions of small-scale farmers in rural economies, and a major market opportunity for the private sector. Farmers comprise the vast majority of people living in extreme poverty today around the world. And development aid focused on them brings big results. Urbanization presents an opportunity for farmers and rural entrepreneurs to improve their lot by supplying cities, as long as the transformation of urban food chains does not leave them behind. Ladies and gentlemen, the years that will pass from now until 2050 will test our collective ability to rise to this monumental task of food security and poverty reduction. With unparalleled expertise, historical experience, and leadership potential at its disposal, the United States should tackle this opportunity head-on. In this area, we are the indispensable nation. Thank you all for your attention to the summary of the 2016 report presented by Dan Glickman and myself. It's content-rich. I urge your careful reading, and don't neglect the substantive and interesting information in the boxes that are spread throughout the report. A lot of good information there. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome to the podium Navin Salem, founder and CEO of Disha Nutrition. Navin, please welcome to the podium, and thank you for your attention.